where did the racism come from? Where this poison came from? And then I will end up with our patron of social justice, St. Martin de Porres, who have helped me not ever get discouraged or feel really inferior or less human being like he did because of whatever racism that I have experienced. I have to say, I read this book. This is a book by Jason Reynolds and Ibram X. Kendi. And I will depend heavily on what they say. They, in their writing, they say it is not a historical book, and it is not. But I find it such a really fast-paced reading that can shed a lot of light on this topic of racism. So the book is called Stand by Reynolds, Jason, and Ibram Kendi. So, racism is a sin, and like any other sin, by now you will remember, and at least when you go out there, you will remember that. That's why I will repeat it always. Racism is a sin, and like any other sin, we have to overcome its temptation. I already said that racism is produced by someone, some group, and it is, Kendi says, people who are racist are people who simply became ignorant and hateful. Yeah? I buy that. I believe it. People who became ignorant and hateful. And it goes back all the way down to Aristotle, that thought for some reason people who live in certain area can be better or superior than others. So racism is real. Let's not fool ourselves. Now, is everybody racist? By no means, no way. Can we who love this country, I know how much I do, can we say that this country in general, can we label it as a racist country? I cannot agree with that. There are racist people. There are people who really produce racist ideas, who foment racist ideas. But I cannot say that everybody is racist and this country overall is a racist country. No. So likewise, there are racists and there are anti-racist ideas that suggest that racial groups are equals. According to the authors of this book, racist and anti-racist ideas have lived in human minds for nearly 600 years, born in Western Europe in the midst of the 1400s. Racist ideas traveled to colonial America and have lived in the United States from its beginning. So Kendi, the author of this book, says that there are the racists, the anti-racists, and you who have not fallen into it, you who have realize that, like any other sin, racism is a sin, and we have to overcome its temptation. Of course, there are racist ideas still being sold in America. Certainly, it is the racist ideas that has caused the death of so many black teenagers we have seen lately, like Trayvon Martin, Darnisha Harris, Tammy Rice, Kimani Gray, Michael Brown, and the list can go on. We have heard them, we have seen in the news people who have really been enraged by their racist idea find that they can take the life of others. The recent killings of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery, that right now the trial is going, and we know there is strike again for the disparity or whatever that comes with it. All these gave way to subsequent protests that highlights the racism and inequality in this country. Third, we have seen it. And certainly, federal statistics show that black people are 5 times more likely to be incarcerated. I don't say that myself, it is statistic. 40% of the incarcerated population in the US is African American, who only represent the 13% of the whole population. Something really doesn't make sense here. If the population of African American is only 13%, how come 40% of the incarcerated are black? So, and again, as I said, this is federal statistics. Most recently, we saw some horrific images coming from under the bridge in Del Rio, Texas, of mistreatment of migrants. I had several family members there. I had 2 brothers, 1 nephew, and their respective wives with their kids under that bridge. And one of them got deported to Haiti. All of them were living in Chile, in Brazil, but that's not what the point. I'm just sharing that information with you. But the point I want to make is about the horrible images that we saw, the mistreatment with those on a horse chasing those people. We haven't seen that with other people. So something like that tells you that, yeah, as the director of the Department of Homeland Security says, Majorca, he says, we have not turned that page. This page has not been turned really of the racism. And from the beginning of the 21st century, the American culture is increasingly dominated by colorblind and post-racial discourse. Great progress has been made, and we cannot ignore it as well in regard to racism. With the cry, yes we can, we have elected a black president in the United States for the first time. And I think that was a turning point. I really thought, like many other people, the I have a dreams of Martin Luther King was true, became true. But we have to admit, yeah, we have progressed, but there are still people people out there with their racist idea that is taking us backward. It was a time when I think Martin Luther King from heaven was laughing. He was smiling. And I thought also, like many other people, that racism was totally over the election of a black president. To me, it was a tangible expression, a clear evidence that racism was over, gone, forever, ended. But I come to realize that anyone who thinks that way, that there will be a time when there will be no need of addressing this topic anymore because there will be no racism among us, is like saying, well, there will be a time when there will be no need of confession because no one will have impure thoughts. Or the number 6, Father. I mean, that's the confession I hear most often. The impure thoughts are because there will be no sins. And it's not. Anyone who thinks like that is being genuine. Seriously, I do believe that time will come when there will be people living together thinking that we all are equal, we all are made in the image and likeness of God, and no one will be discriminated. But this time is when we all realize that racism is a sin, and like any other sin, we have to overcome its temptation. Kendi reflects that rather than trying to persuade or educate racism away, people should focus on eliminating racist policies, because racist ideas are produced to justify these policies. He says racist people are people who simply became ignorant and hateful. They simply give in to racist idea that a particular group or person or people or individual have presented to them, and they get hooked in, and that will lead us to the second point, which is to contextualize racism as we know it. How did it get among us? Well, as we know racism today, it made its way from Eastern Europe in America in the 15th century. And Kendi reminds us again that racist ideas are ideas. Anyone can produce them or consume them. Black, Asian, Hispanic, any groups. There are lazy and hard-working people in every race. There are wise and unwise people in every group. There are harmful and harmless people or individuals of every race. But no racial group is better or worse than another racial group in any way. In the particular case of racism against black people, people of color, according to Jason Reynolds, its protagonist or champion producer of the racist ideas is a man, a Portuguese, named Gomes Ioannis de Surada. He was the first one who wrote about and defended black human ownership and the anti-black racist ideas. he wrote a document called The Chronicle of the Discovery and Conquest of Guinea. And in that book, or that document, he depicted Africans as savage animals that need to be tamed. And soon, before you know it, these ideas spread all over Europe, and people were buying it, putting their own stamp on it. They were even making African, convinced African to believe that they were inferior. So, this is the context, as you know, racism in Europe against black people, especially, coming to America, and where Martin...
for coming to America.
Oh, what was that? That's my fault. Okay, I'm sorry. I think Siri, yeah. I hit the wrong button. So this is the context in which Martin was born, where because of the skin of his color, he could not be admitted to the order of friar. St. Thomas Aquinas says, we cannot judge the past with present knowledge. So we know better today that I would not be here if that would be the case. I would not have had the experience I had here at St. Peter if that would be the case, if we would stay in the idea of 15th, 16th centuries that a black person cannot be a priest. Although I have shared with you that probably, I don't really know if I remember correctly, when I was growing up in Haiti, I went to the priest in my hometown and I expressed them my interest of becoming a priest. And they turned me down exactly with that. Say, you are not intelligent enough. Or you have, well, they have known me, they have seen me, how I was struggling to go to school, because all my story, you already know, many of you. I couldn't go to school regularly. So, of course, the directors of the priests, although I have to admit, priest in Haiti is like a lux. If you are a priest in Haiti, you are a big shot. You have a good status in society. And because of that, they are very selective. I understand that. So you would get the best of the best to be a priest. But that was what they said to me. I don't necessarily say it was because of my skin color, but who were they to tell me that I couldn't be a priest because I'm not intelligent enough? And that is what St. Martin de Porres helped me understand so clearly. It's not about what they say to you, how anybody treats you. It's about how you feel yourself and what you understand who you are in the eyes of God, especially. And to me, I know how precious I am in the eye of God. So that didn't deter me to continue my way. With God's grace, I am who I am. By God's grace, as St. Paul says. But here I am. And these same people who turned me down on the basic idea, I regret the day I turned down that letter. I should have kept it with me, not for any, but Not for resentment. I don't have resentment in mind. But because nowadays, these same people, twice, I have made big containers with the help of people in the parish and have gathered $5,000 and sent it to them, which I see as the story of Joseph. It was necessary for them to turn me down on whatever base they had, to be where I am, to be who I am, to understand who I am, to make friends with Martin de Porres. So, Martin de Porres was born in that context, which is the occasion for which I came here to talk about him. Although racism also, but as I said, really, should I be the one speaking about racism here? I remember when I was being assigned here, something I shared with you, I screamed, I jumped, I argued among all the round table of those who are making the decision to send me to Memphis. I said, what am I going to do there? That's the place they killed Martin Luther King. But I know, you remember the experience. That's why whenever I come here, I really feel home, although people come all the way from Miami to be watching me, not to stay here. I have him there, back there. So, but really it was the greatest experience. So I'm here to talk about this holy man, how he absorbed the prejudice of his time. He suffered rejection, beginning with his own father, abandonment, racism, and prejudice. He was born on the December 9th, 1579, in Lima, Peru, of his father, who was a nobleman, and his mother was a free slave in Panama. So the law that prevented him to join the Dominicans, but that did not deter him of offering himself as a donator, someone who gave himself for the most dirty work that could be possible. He accepted it. And Martin even make excuses for those who have prejudice against him, who have mistreated him. And that is what I find so amazing about him. In many ways, in many times, in several moments, myself, I have experienced in some way some prejudice. People who do not know me, they can see exactly as you can see my hair now. If you see me coming, you don't know me, like what happened with a lady right there at that corner. I was gonna go for a walk. I just left the house, gonna go for a walk, although my hair wasn't like that yet. It was a clean cut. But a lady is coming, face me, and they see, a black man is coming at me. So she crossed over the other side of the street. And for some reason, I was kind of naughty. Sometimes I can be naughty. I jumped over and I crossed over, and I'm walking toward her. When she got close to me, she didn't have escape, she couldn't do anything. She grabbed her first. Because what does she think? I'm a black person, I'm coming at her, I might be a danger. But it is not. But that I took joy because when I was close crossing her, I almost scared her. I wanted to say, I'm glad that you offered something like that, to scare her even more. But I had pity on her. And I prayed for her, really. And I prayed. I said a prayer for her. And that, I think, you have to be at a place with yourself where you can really not let that kind of attitude or saying about you for your skin color to make you think otherwise. So Martin not only accepted whatever came at him, but he really gave himself even more. He used that as a way for him to be sanctified. Martin gave himself to all those who were in the same or worse situation as him, loving everyone, comforting the sick. He provided food, clothing, and medicine for the poor. He helped as best as he could all those who would come to him seeking comfort, and especially the outcast, the downtrodden, the slaves, the Negroes. So I would like to finish by borrowing these words from Candy, one of the authors. He said, "The first step to building an anti-racist America is acknowledging America's racist past." So yeah, we have a country, we have some history where we know it has been brutal, segregation, for instance, We have to acknowledge this. By acknowledging America's racist past, we can acknowledge America's racist present. So, still, as I said, we're not gonna fool ourselves thinking, oh, it's over, there is no racism, and we do not have to talk about that anymore. And in acknowledging America's racist present, we can work toward building an America that are completely anti-racist. That time when we all realize that racism is a sin and we all have to overcome its temptation. An anti-racist America where no racial group has more or less or is thought of as more or less. An anti-America, an anti-racist America where the people no longer hate on racial groups or try to change racial groups. An anti-racist America where our skin color is as irrelevant as the color of the clothes that cover our skin. So there will be a time, I believe, like with Martin Luther King, who said, I have that great dream. There will come a time when Americans will realize that the only thing wrong with black people is that they think that something is wrong with black people. There will come a time when racist ideas will no longer obstruct us from seeing the complete and utter abnormality of racial disparities. There will come a time when we love humanity, when we will gain the courage to fight for an equitable society, for our beloved humanity, knowing intelligently, as Kendi says, that when we fight for humanity, we are fighting for ourselves. There will come that time. maybe when we realize that sin, that racism is a sin, and like any other sin, we have to overcome its temptation. That is the time when we realize this grievous sin, this poison in our midst, that we have to fight. And that is the time Martin de Porres lived. That is the time he is pointing for us, and I personally am inspired by Saint Martin de Porres. I always tend to mix Martin Luther King as well. A man who really worked, gave his life for that kind of America where everyone can live as son and daughter of God without being discriminated for their skin color. I ask the intercession of Martin de Porres to help us all avoid the temptation of racism. And again, as I said, racism is a sin, and anyone can fall into it. And the better way not to fall in it is by avoiding or overcoming its temptation. So brothers and sisters, this is what I have to share with you. I don't know if you have any question. I certainly will be happy to answer those I can. In my personal experience, I cannot say I have ever experienced racism here in this church where I served for 2.5 years. I remember so clearly, so vividly, so fondly the experience I had here. I still have, as I said, experienced some racism in some way, discrimination in some way. Like, for instance, when I was made pastor in Miami almost 7 years ago, a guy came to me and said, do you realize, do you know that you are the very first black pastor we have ever have in our church? I said, yes. And then he kind of looked at me. But years has gone by, and maybe 4 or 5 years after seeing what I have done, how that church has been transformed, he came to me, he came back to me. And I know it was his idea, but he said to me, do you realize there are a lot of people who really hate you?